as always, we hope that you're doing the best that you're being able to.
Well, thank you. Welcome everybody that's here. Looks like Chloe, she showed up. She must be at work. Thank you for being here. Susie Q and Lucky Stone. Yes, I all made it. Last week I had to work. Sorry about that. Last minute call. I'll be out here with the fly swatter because there's a lot of flies here tonight. I got fly strips out and everything. Man, they're just creepy crawly all over me. But anyway.
Fly me to the moon.
We are going to be talking about the second half of the Dakota Massacre. And you didn't think the first part was fun? Well, welcome to the second part. And okay, I just got to get my notes out. I got notes.
Now, make sure you brief us just a little bit on what happened up to here.
That's what I'm going to do.
I know you are. I know you are.
I am.
He's got a synopsis, ladies and gentlemen.
There's just so much. Get rid of that. But anyway, there's just so much on this 1862 Dakota War Lucky, I agree. Work is such a pain to like. Well, at least you can work and live. You know, you're not.
But it pays the bills.
Yes, and then you got to pay the bills. You're a slave to the job, and that's how it works. Okay, and I got it. This to present. Green giant. Anyway, present. Screen share. We'll start out with this. Entire screen, and this will get us through some of this. Well, anyway, the Dakota War of 1862. Just bring us up to date. In 1862, the Dakota War. This was all started by treaties. Believe it or not, there was lots of treaties that were signed back in the day. And each one of these treaties really, didn't do the native people much good. They were bad. Started out in the Treaty of 1805. So, in 1805, the Treaty of Zebulon Pike, and that is this guy right here. I think I'm Zebulon Pike. And Zebulon Pike, he was a lieutenant. He went into the Dakota Territory, and he signed.
No, that's Zebulon. What did you name him? It's Zebulon.
Zebulon. Thank you. He signed a treaty which gave the U.S. government 100,000 acres of land from the Indians, which was located on the corner of the Minnesota River and the Mississippi River. There they established Fort Snelling. Fort Snelling, which is a really good-looking little fort, was on this river. Actually,
I want to know how they estimated that many acres back then. Oh, it's 144,000 acres. Oh, it's I'm just curious.
They probably who knows? Maybe they shipped out their what do you call those guys?
Surveyors. But surveyors. I mean, it's the way they put it. They just write it down so matter-of-factly. And now, we got GPS, in the old days, they had to get there, and then they had to go out with sticks and the thing, and it took a while. So how they just came up with this. Yep, that's how many acres it was, and but I'm sorry.
Well, Zebulon Montgomery Pike, Who, and on September 23rd, 1805. Now remember, who else went out west in the 1800s? Can you tell me that one?
Nope.
Lewis and Clark. Lewis and Clark. Oh. Remember, and they went up the Mississippi to the Missouri River, and then they took the Missouri River out west, and they came back at about the same time, saying, "Holy cow! There's a bunch of vast land over there, and we need to get this land." Of course, the president's like, "Yeah, we better buy this Louisiana Purchase. We got this land. We're going to move America out." There was a plan behind the whole thing. They sent Zebulon, Montgomery Pike, out there, who on September 23rd, 1805, acquired for the government by treaty with the Sioux Nation the site of Fort Snelling. And there you go. And that was the start of, that was the foothold. And the Indians seceded the land, and the Indians moved off the land. And as you can see here, in this photo, ceded lands. As they moved on, see, here's the Mississippi River. You want to look at this? Here's the Mississippi River. And where's the Minnesota? I don't know where the Minnesota River is. I'm sorry. But anyway, as you go along, this must have been the land he ceded. Well, these people had to move. They moved, and their land got seceded. Look at, they had to move over here. 1837. Well, we'll cede some more land in 1847. We'll cede some more land in 1855. In 1854, ceded this land. You're getting moved up to this little corner in 1866. 1863, you cede your little bit of land over here you got. And pretty soon in 1899, you give up the rest of it. And now there's no land left for you. How about that? Now this here, this little strip, this was the Indian reservation area along this river. This is the Minnesota River, I think it is. But anyway, and this is what the Indians had to live on. You see, just this little strip. So all the Indians lived on all this vast land, had to move out. Little by little by little, they moved out, and pretty soon, there's none left for them. And then the white man comes along and says, I want that land too. You know what I'm saying?
Yep.
There was no land left for those poor Indians. Okay, so because
can
of
I
this,
ask, can I ask a question? Did they really know what they were doing?
That is the bad part.
I mean, were they really cognizant of what they were giving up? And one would say that sounds like a shady deal, like maybe somebody held a gun to their head.
Well, no, that the interpretations of a lot of these treaties, the Indians didn't understand money. They didn't understand about land. This,
that's what I mean. Did they truly understand what they were doing? That you just said it right there. Thank you.
And yeah, they were skunked out of a lot of this. There was a lot of corruption. Like, the Indians were promised land and they were promised money, and the monies and the land, it just didn't work out all the times. These treaties were very unfair. And okay, so here, you just let what you're talking about. These treaties, over 400 of them from their earliest days. In the 1870s, when the process ended by the act of Congress in Minnesota, some 17 treaty transfer lands ownership from the Dakota, the Ojibwe, and the United States. Most concluded between 1837 and statehood in 1858. The treaty-making process was unfair and plagued with problems that left the Dakota and the Ojibwe with little choice but to sign. Some of these issues included differing concepts of land ownership, an unequal balance of power, problems, and corruption in interpretation, differing structures of leadership, and the failure in many cases of the U.S. government to meet agreed upon treaty obligations. So even if you signed the treaty, they didn't understand it, and then the U.S. government didn't fulfill their obligations to it.
Well,
the lecture,
and they didn't understand it either sometimes. I mean, there's some stuff going on right now in Congress where they've been grilling the ATF about pistols with the bump stock thing, that they tried to say that once you put the bump stock on it, that it turns it into a rifle. No, it's a pistol with a stock on it, but it's the ATF that decided to make that rule. And Congress said, we didn't make no law. The president didn't sign it. Who are you to make this? So interpretation, but so it's still going on today.
Yes. People who are not elected are making rules that we have to live by.
And so back in them days, they had some shysters around, and that was like, well, these stupid Indians don't know what's going on, and write some stuff down. We're going to do this, and oh, chief, it's going to be okay. Well, then a couple of years later, somebody else gets elected, and if you notice, those dates are almost between election times. So 4 years later, somebody else was elected, and the treaty changes. So the people who hold the treaty will interpret it to the red man who has just a basic knowledge of what the hell you're talking about, and the next thing you know, he's given up the state of Minnesota.
Pretty much. And
okay, I'm sorry, I get carried away.
Okay, so let's see the details. Okay, I don't know if you can see this map. This is another map of the ceded lands. And you can see, the dates on how they gave it up, and it just eats up little bits and pieces. And of course, they just keep moving, and then they keep moving. And a lot of these guys were moved out of places like even Wisconsin. They moved out of Wisconsin, went to Minnesota, and then they kept moving, a little bit farther west, until they literally were bumped up against other tribes who wanted to war with them. And that was even a bigger problem.
And the next thing some of them migrated north into Canada, and the others migrated west.
Yes, they did. So here's some of these little treaties. And this is a treaty, 1825 Prairie du Chien Treaty. This treaty established boundaries between American Indian nations, making it easier for the government to negotiate for land cessions later. And then 1837 treaty with the Chippewa. This treaty transferred land in east central Minnesota and northern Wisconsin to the federal government. This was one of the treaties reviewed. And then in 1851, the treaty with the Sioux, the Secession, and the Wahpeton bands. This treaty is one of two treaties in 1851 that transferred nearly all the land in southern Minnesota for the Dakota to the federal government. This is one of the treaties. Okay. And then in 1858, the treaty with the Sioux. This treaty conducted in Washington and forces the Dakota to relinquish the portion of their 1851 reservation north of the Minnesota River. So they wait a few years, and we'll take a little more.
So what made them, let's bring this into some kind of context, what made them decide to look at each other and go, hey, we better give up our stuff? You know what I mean? If they didn't whip them or stab them or shoot at them at that time, but what caused them to go, hey, George, maybe we better give up our stuff, and we're going to just move into this little strip of land, and we're just going to, go along with this piece of paper, I mean, so I wonder what the United States. Well, wonder what they held over the natives' heads and the
Well,
chiefs. Was it the fact that when the chiefs went to Washington and they saw what Washington was and saw, I guess, the strength of the peoples, if you will, when they got into the eastern United States and they looked around, they went, "Oh, holy crap! We are never going to win this."
Yeah, remember that was the plan. They would take the Indians to Washington, and when the chiefs got back, they knew there was more white people out there than the leaves on the trees, and they couldn't believe the giant ships and the giant buildings, and that they were overwhelmed, and they realized that, you know, we have, you know, we can't fight this. And I think the chiefs were smart in that respect. Before
Can you imagine now? You went and you saw, and you rode on the iron horse for the first time. Took you to the Capitol. You spoke to the great leaders, the great chiefs, and you sat around and you thought, "Oh, holy! Well, I wonder what really went through their minds." You know, I mean, just.
Yeah.
They've been used to out there on the prairie and living in a teepee, and then they go into a concrete jungle and all that kind of stuff. It must have been amazing.
Oh, yeah. I mean, considering they never, probably some of the chiefs going to Washington, never even seen a white guy when they were a child, you know, and then grew up, and then all of a sudden, wow, you know, there's all these white guys. You know, what the heck? Where'd they come from? And they're everywhere.
And all the architecture and everything in Washington, D.C., and all of the way it's laid out, and statues and monuments, and you know, just the whole general layout of stuff, where native folks would have never thought of doing that. You know what I mean?
The technology, you'd see. I mean, I'm sure they knew there was technology that was just amazing. I mean, they were overwhelmed. So, you know, here we go. Before the war, you know, these people, the Western Dakota, Lakota, existed the distinct tribal communities. Eastern Dakota had been part of Minnesota for centuries. The bluffs where Minnesota and Minneapolis rivers diverge near present-day Fort Snelling play a critical role in the tribe's origin story. So they basically, their origin land was bought up by, you know, Zebulon Pike, you know, and
it wasn't even bought.
Well, yeah, treaty.
They scared them off of it.
Yes. Fort Snelling Park. I've never been there. I drove through Minneapolis.
Can you find it on a map and point to it?
Yes, I can try. Just give me a second. You always ask these questions I don't have answers for.
Oh, and I always pick on you.
Okay, maybe there's a map.
Oh, never mind. I thought you had one in queue.
No, that's one thing I don't have. I didn't have a map of Fort Snelling. I got a picture of Fort Snelling, but
well, that picture, the one where there was all the different sections that they gave up.
Yeah, trying to find a map for it. But anyway,
never mind.
Idea. Oh, okay. Maybe there is. Here we go. I'll get one yet. You know me, I'm pretty. Oh, this computer is just going so slow today.
Yeah, you've glitched a few times.
Oh yeah. It's Park Trail Loop. Okay, this is the best I can do on short notice. Come on. Here, Fort Snelling. It is right there. This is the park loop. So Long Meadow Lake. And it's a state park now. So if you guys are driving down 9094, here's a big park. You probably go past it on the interstate. So there you go. You can go there.
And where is it located in the state?
The route is it's in Minnesota, by Minneapolis.
Oh, okay, Doc.
Right, this looks like that. Yeah. So there you go. And all by the rivers, and you can walk the park and see the fort. Keep the image too large. Okay. Let's see if we can. Yeah, so there we go. Minnesota State Wildlife. There we go. Best I can do on short notice. This is 494. So if you ever get out that way, take 494. And that will bring you right through to the Fort Snelling Area State Park. How about that? Okay. Okay. Broken treaties. Get back at this. The first treaty signed with the Dakota was 1805 or Zebulon Pike. And that gave them Fort Snelling. In 1825, the tribe agreed to define its borders with several other tribes of Terry Duchesne. We went through that. 1837 and 1858, the Dakota tribes agreed in a series of treaties that exchanged Dakota land for money and food. So by 1858, these people were literally running out of food, money. They didn't have any thing to trade anymore. They killed all the animals, so they didn't have anything. It was like it was a big plan. They agreed for money and food. At the same time, the U.S. government passed a number of policies encouraging settlement along a western frontier, including the creation of the state of Minnesota, which Minnesota is an Indian name. Eventually, the Civil War meant that the U.S. government had fallen seriously behind on its payments and delivery of food, leaving the Dakota on the verge of starvation. This, combined with the influx of American settlers, meant that the Dakota had no way of feeding themselves. The situation would come to a head in the summer of 1862. So that brings us up to 1862. So
now, you know what? It just seems interesting. They couldn't have sent them a couple of cows.
Well, here's the problem. There was a lot of corruption.
I know, but I mean, to the point where you couldn't have gave them a couple of cows, but
okay, no, yes, they did. That's the problem. So the government would send the food and all these things to the Indian agencies, right? Now that the corruption began there, where these Indian agency guys would take the food and they would take the supplies and they would sell it to other people, or they would give it to the Indians at a price. And then when the government payments came in, the Indians were buying this on credit, and the creditors got their money before the Indians did. And that's where the problem was. So if you were promised, they sold their land, they were promised $5 an acre, and instead they got like 30 cents an acre. But this was to be paid out over years. And it didn't go well because these people were hungry. And what happened then was there was a small uprising of the Indians. And the government, one of the Indian agency guys, said, "You're not getting any money until you hunt down those people who were uprising. So you can starve, eat grass, whatever you want to do, but you're not getting any money until you bring those people to justice. We're not doing it." So now the Indians had to go hunt their own people down, right? And they couldn't find them, so they didn't get any money. They were being withheld on all of this. So eventually the government couldn't even pay them the money. And so their creditors wouldn't give them any credit anymore. And therefore they couldn't buy any. So now all the food is sitting and things are sitting in a warehouse and they can't get it. And now they're starving to death and their people are dying. And so what do you think is going to happen? So in August of 1862, in Morton, Minnesota, the first day they uprose and they went to the storehouses and the Indian agencies and they killed the Indian agents and raided the storehouses. And then they went ahead and they started raiding houses and anybody along the way. They killed several hundred people and took about 250 captives. This lasted for up to 6 weeks. 800 or more people were killed, believe it or not. Anyway, so this went on.
I would ask the question, just because I'm crazy, would you think that they were justified in any way?
Well, I think that, yes, they were justified, and I think it started out as we're only going to take our food, we're only going to harm those who've harmed us, and then as it went on, it went crazier and crazier and crazier until, it's like they were feeding the fire. Well, we killed 10 people, let's kill 20 more. Look at that guy over there, let's kill him too, let's kill this one, let's, and just go house to house and burn and rape and pillage them. You know what I mean? It was once you get a angry mob, they just keep going. There ain't no way to put out the fire a lot of times. You know what I'm saying?
Yep.
Okay. So what it said, well, and so they went on. Okay. The raid led to the deaths of 5 settlers. Little Crow, who was a chief of the Metawakan tribe band of Dakota, decided to continue the raid. Now he's kind of the head guy of this whole thing, even though he can't control anybody really. The day after the raid action, Little Crow led another raid against a lower Sioux agency. There was an upper and a lower Sioux. Okay, so then near Morton County, Minnesota, in Renville County, a relief force led by the Minnesota Mendota was routed by the Dakota. In subsequent days, Dakota warriors led raids against New Ulm, Fort Ridgely, both which had limited success because of the Civil War. Most of the men were, fighting the Civil War at this time. So the Indians had slim pickings, it was young kids and old men. The U.S. government was slow to send troops to the quelling in the uprising. Instead, military forces were primarily comprised of volunteer groups led by former Governor Henry Sibley. Okay, on September 23rd, federal forces defeated Dakota in the Battle of Wood Lake, Yellow Medicine County. 3 days later, Dakota surrendered, releasing nearly 300 captives. The Dakota who surrendered were held until military trials could take place in November. Hundreds of Dakota were held at Camp Release near Montevideo. Montevideo? Yeah, something like that. Okay. The trial. This is where we pick up with things. These treaties were bad. The treaty with Washington in 1858 was the worst treaty. This was leading up to the massacre because it confined them to this small space. And so then once they're in this small space, missionary. Now we're going to go with the missionaries, descended upon the Indians to convert them to farmer Indians. And these missionaries focused on forcing them to abandon their culture and stop being Dakotas and be farmer Indians. Believe in Christianity. Give up your ways and do as the white man does. Cut your hair, go to school, wear white man clothes. This was not a big, winner, but some did. And those who did got special preference on the food they got, the farming equipment, the things that they needed. They got first dibs on everything, which was kind of really unfair.
The more white they became, the better treatment they got.
Yes, exactly. So after this uprising was ended, they rounded up all these people, and here it goes with they were held at Camp Release. There of the 498 trials held, more than 300 men were sentenced to death for crimes ranging from rape to murder. The defendants were not allowed legal representation, and the trials themselves were brief, and in some lasting less than 5 minutes. Now, I also read that, they had poor interpreters. Sometimes they didn't have any interpreter. They just brought him in and said, this looks like a guilty one, he's condemned to death. Boom, done. Their idea was to exterminate Indians. That's what they were really after, to just exterminate it. After all that killing and, uprising, they wanted to exterminate the Indians. And it gets better after this, too. So, President Abraham Lincoln gets involved. And he personally reviewed the conditions of the Dakota men. And he lobbied he just said, you can't execute all these people. And he commuted all but 39 sentences, deciding only the Dakota involved in civilian massacres should be executed. And on December 26, 1862, 38 were hung at Mankato, in the biggest one-time hanging in U.S. history. If you notice, 39 sentences, one sentence was commuted, and the guy was pardoned. I don't know who it was that was pardoned, but 38 people were hung. There was 4,000 spectators that came to the hanging. It was like a free-for-all. They were selling souvenirs, everything from, beer bottles engraved with hangings, posters, you name it, they had it. It was like a big fair. Hanging the Indians. It was a spectacle, souvenirs galore. People were making money on this. The governor did do a few things. He brought in 1,500 soldiers to keep the peace. And he also forbid the sale of liquor in a 10-mile radius. A bunch of drunken white men would have got their guns and said, let's get rid of them all right now.
What about the drunken Indians that might have showed up? But
no, they took all the Indians away. All the Indians were locked up, every single one of them at this point. After they gotten these Indians, after these the massacres and everything, they rounded up all the Indians and they took them away. Okay, so it doesn't, I don't know. Okay, so that's what's next. Another nearly 1,600 Dakota women and children, elderly, were held during the winter of 1862 and 63 on Pike Island, not far from Mendota and within sight of Fort Snelling. Disease quickly spread, killing hundreds in the camp. In April 1863, Minnesota voided its treaties with the Dakota and sent those living in the camps to Nebraska. Soon after, Congress passed legislation making it illegal for Dakota to live in Minnesota. It remains law to this day. There you go. So, yeah, they rounded them all up. Now here's the thing. They rounded up these people after the government nullified all the treaties. So now they seceded all the lands. They signed the treaties. They got $0. Now, instead of paying them, they got zero, nothing, zip, nada, nothing. They dissolved the reservation. They hung the 38 men in Mankato. They removed 600 Dakota and non-combatants. They put them in concentration camps. You think that you were talking about Germany thing and the whole 9 yards. You know, during World War II, they rounded up the Japanese living in the United States and put them in where? Concentration camps. This was nothing new. If you think the government won't stop, someday when you're, they'll just call it something else, maybe a FEMA camp or something, but they will say, oh, it's a freedom camp, so you don't have a home, we're putting you in it. Concentration camps to the government are nothing new.
Well, you remember about 2 years ago when people were quarantined.
Yes.
Against their will.
Literally, yeah. Yeah, exactly.
And so, we have had this in our lifetime, the goodwill of the government against the people in many cases. And, and the amount of, when local people are given power, they sometimes go overboard. And that happened many times, we've seen. And so think about what those local guys did to the Indians all them years ago. They were cheating and stealing as much as they could.
So here's another thing. Now, not only did they round up those Dakota people, but anybody who was an Indian got rounded up too. Nearly 2,000 Ho-Chunk people living in Blue Earth were removed to the Dakota Territory and later Nebraska. The Winnebago were rounded up and moved to Omaha, Nebraska. The Ojibwe were also removed to Nebraska. Okay, Mr. Henry Benjamin Whipple, an Episcopal bishop of Minnesota, did save some families to stay who were converted to Christianity and acted like white people.
And changed their names, probably.
Yes.
Gave them a Social Security card.
Well, exactly. If you change, we'll let you stay, but you got to act like a white person. And that was only very few, and he had to work on that. It wasn't fair. So this governor during that time, now this gets even more interesting, people. Let's see if I got anything good here. Okay, the legacy of war, the casualties, the conflicts up to this day. We don't want.
Let me add this little bit. Think of the native folks being treated as immigrants.
Yes.
Because if if you started acting white, you kind of sort of got a green card. But then to be a true American citizen, you got to be able to recite the Constitution. You got to be able to, do a couple of things, and then you get your citizenship. And so that's sort of the way it was with them back then. It's supposed to be the way it happens now, but I'm sorry, go ahead.
Okay, so this is Little Crow, the leader, right? Now you think, oh yeah, Little Crow, he was Indian, he was trying to stick with the old ways. No, he tried converting. He dressed as the white man. He went to the church. He did all these things, and yet, he's seen all this stuff happening. He did. Let's see here. Here's one of the treaties that he signed. And this was the Treaty of Mendota. He was there. The Treaty of Mendota was signed by Pilot Knob at Pilot Knob in Mendota, Minnesota, on August 5th, 1851, following the Treaty of Traverse the Sioux on July 23rd. Between the United States federal government, this is where the Indians come and got some money. Wapaki bands and the Wakan bands is outlined much the same agreement as the previous treaty. Bands were to receive the interest of 1,410,000 that was to be applied to agricultural implements, provisions, education, and annuities in return for relocation to the Lower Sioux Agency near present-day Morton, and ceding much of their remaining territory to southwestern Minnesota. Exasperated, Little Crow and other leaders who initially refused to sign did so based on promises that funds would be paid from previously unpaid treaty agreements. The treaty was ratified by Congress, and these promises did not come to pass. So here again, we shafted them. Okay, so the peace and friendship existing between the United States and the Mendota and the Wapettusi bands of the Dakota and Sioux Indians shall be perpetual, said Meriawakatunka and Watanpote bands of Indians, who hereby cede to relinquish all their lands and all their right, title, and claim to any lands whatever in the territory of Minnesota or in the state of Iowa.
Wow.
Okay, here's first people to sign: L. Leah, Alex Ramsey. These are the white guys. The rest of them: Metayawankantokas, Chief Tanoka Detuda, his Scarlet People, or Little Crow. So that's Little Crow we were looking at. And then it just goes on. Sacred Light, or Medicine Bottle. That was a prominent Indian. I think I don't have a picture of him. Sorry. He Lodge, or Jim, or Old Tad. I'm not going to do the Indian names. Black Tomahawk, Those Who Tread Earth Resounds. He Runs Rattling, Walker, The Medicine Boulders of Stones, Scarlet War Eagle. He Moves the Ghosts or Shadows, White Dog, the One Leg Yellow or Orange Colored, Good Thunder, The Standard or Red Leaf, Many Lightnings. He Has a War Club, Red Owl. He Sets the Earth on Fire. So all these guys and more were signing this treaty. And look what they gave up. But $1 million back in the day was like, $10 million today. So
100 million.
Yeah, exactly. So, there was this treaty, and here's the rest of it. See how many.
And it was supposed to be paid out in perpetuity, right? So in other words, It was supposed to be so much a year over a long time.
Yes, they got a little, like 100,000 or something a year, and I forget what it was, but they got a big chunk every year. But what happened is the Indian agents would come up with ways to skunk them out of it. Like, that hammer doesn't cost $1. It costs $12. Here's a bag of grain. It's $25. But, as long as you got credit and I'll charge you a little bit of interest, I'll give you that bag of grain now. But when your money comes in, I take my money first and then you get the rest. You see what I'm saying? And so
working in the coal mine.
Yeah. So when they got their money, they literally got, a few cents on the dollar, and they got to live all year. So, like I said, this is a pilot knob where the Sioux Indians ceded their lands in the territory of Minnesota and state of Iowa to the United States government. There you go. And here you can see, this is an old map, how much land they had. This is actually what Minnesota and Iowa looked like before they chopped it all up. And you can see the Indians were moving, but out here you got the Dakota territory. This is another Sioux tribe. This is the Crow tribe. Here's the Blackfeet. You can't leave Minnesota and keep going because you're running into these other tribes of people, and they don't like you. You've been warring with them for years. You know what I mean? And here's a treaty. But anyway, we got to get back to, here's a treaty. According to the terms of the treaty, $300,000 was to be invested, and the interest was to be paid to the Dakota annually forever. Also, the relatives and friends of the Dakota were to receive $110,000, while the traders were to receive $90,000 for debts owed. Well, if you minus 90, from 110,000, well, every year, you don't get a whole lot. You know what I'm saying?
Yep.
Finally, small annual grants were made to pay the physicians, the farmers, the blacksmith, the materials of their respective callings. However, when asked to sign the Treaty of Mendota, 1851, the Menawakan Dakota initially refused because some of the payments from the 1837 treaty had not been made. Well, of course, and you can see by this map here is where they seceded all these little lands and they moved them over. And then they ceded some more lands. They just kept taking and taking and taking. So anyway,
it's the American way.
It is. So when these Dakota people were locked up, we're going to go to new picture. So here you got the Indians, and they're kind of combined. You can see the fort or the wall around them. They're confined. This is what they got. They went from this whole state to being in the whole state. Now you got this little area with all their teepees and stuff. This is where they're living. This is it. This is where you got all the Indians right here. Isn't that sad? So when the Indians
in about 20 years.
Yeah, exactly. So you got these Indians, they're confined, and what is happening? To show the government that they want to conform, they want to be like the white man, to show their good faith, they were being converted left and right to Christianity. They were giving up their old ways. They were cutting their hair, dressing like the white man, trying to show that, we'll do anything to get out of here. We'll you know what I mean? Let's conform. This is, we'll do whatever. And so they wanted to be friends with the white people. They tried by, trying to, being Christian and all of that. Of course, they had probably a ton of missionaries. Now, as you can see on the bottom of this, the Knights of the Forest. You ever hear of the Knights of the Forest?
No.
Okay, so the Knights
sounds like an MK Ultra group.
It was. Back in the day, this was like the KKK. Now, this is hard to believe, but it's true. So the Knights of the Forest were assembled after the massacre to hunt down Indians. They had secret handshakes, secret meetings. They lasted about 10 years. And to make it even better, the Minnesota governor put a bounty of $25 for every Indian scalp that you could bring in. So if you left the fort or your reservation area out of the boundaries and somebody caught you, they could kill you, scalp you, and give your scalp up for $25. Can you believe that?
Yep.
No, it gets even better. So not enough scalps were coming in, so the governor upped the rate to $200 per scalp by the end of the year. So if you were an Indian, you were walking around with, and back in the 1860s, $200 was a lot of money. Can you imagine? I can just be an Indian hunter and make hundreds of dollars, just by hunting.
That was almost like $2,000.
Well, yeah, exactly. All I gotta do, and it ain't like if you go out and kill an Indian that you go to prison. You go kill an Indian, scalp them, they give you $200. How terrible is it? We are the cruelest, horriblest.
And that's where, the only good Indian is a dead Indian.
Yeah, that's what they were saying,
Yeah.
See, here's one that we didn't have. Anyway, I'm getting right down to the end of my presentation here, so don't worry. Here's a bit of the Treaty of Traverse. A Treaty of Governor Dottie in 1841. 10 years prior, the Sisseton and the Wahpeton bands had traversed to territory of Iowa on July 31st, 1841 by the Menawakans at Mendota on the 11th day of August following. By the terms, these tribes sold all their lands to the United States, except small designated portions, therefore reserved for their homes. They were to receive, therefore, stated annuities and to be taught the arts of civilization, since their nomadic habits were to be exchanged for those of an agricultural character. Lands were to be allotted to them in several civility, 100 acres to each family, and citizenship. So there you go. You traded.
What did I say earlier about citizenship?
Yeah.
That was the ticket. That was your green, that was your get home free card.
Yep. So
citizenship.
Yeah, exactly. So it's just amazing when you read through this how scary it really, really, really is. I mean, because I can't believe, they would, the United States does this or did this. These poor people, I understand they wanted to open up the lands to people. This was, Minnesota has great farmland. You can see how they divided all this up. Here's a chunk, there's a chunk. Wisconsin, because Wisconsin became a state in 1848. So all the Indians had to move out of there. They moved over to Minnesota. Then they shrunk them down, and the idea was to literally exterminate. They used this verbiage to exterminate the Indians. Extermination.
Either convert or die.
Pretty much. As you can see here, it just got divided up, and 1863, you got this little bit here, and that's it. And then after that, 1866, 89, and you're done. No more. Like I said, they made it illegal for you to be an Indian in Minnesota. They moved everybody to Nebraska, and it didn't matter if you were part of the warring tribe that massacred all those people. If you were an Indian, you were included. It doesn't matter if you were trying to be good or what. You just got grouped into everything. You know what I'm saying? There was no, well, that one's a good Indian and this is a bad Indian. It was just all grouped together. Didn't matter if you were a Winnebago or a Ojibwe, a Chippewa, Sioux, Dakota Sioux. It didn't matter for any of them. You got, so in Henry H. Sibley's letter to Abraham Lincoln after the hanging, this is what he said. Everything went quietly. Other prisoners are well and secured. This was on December 27, 1862. And they had, the weird part is they had this hanging the day after Christmas.
Yep.
They call us, they say that this is a Christian society, Bible thumping people. Yeah, we're civilized. And you just celebrate Christmas, and the day after, let's go hang a bunch of people. You see the logic?
Let's go hang a bunch of savages,
Yeah, exactly. And, and there's 4,000 spectators. Come on. It just blows my mind. It's like, oh, there's a hanging today. It's like going to the fair.
Yeah, they would take kids and have picnics.
Yeah, exactly. Let's take the kids and go have a picnic as we watch them. So here's so now it gets even bad. Okay. So people were sold souvenirs. The guy who flipped the lever was Captain William F. Dooley. Once they tripped the lever and everybody fell to their death, they left them swinging there for 30 minutes just to make sure they're good and dead. They took the bodies down to the river. They dug shallow graves and they buried them. Now, here's the worst part. This is so gruesome. There's no pictures that can describe this. So after they buried them in the shallow graves, people went and dug the Indians up and sold the bodies for medical experimentations. Physicians went down there and dug up the bodies, to do dissections and crap like that. So most of the bodies were dug up. Now, the fun doesn't stop there. They did capture another 2 Indians, Shakopee and Medicine Bottle. They gave themselves up and told that they would have no harm come to them. Of course, they were locked up in prison. And a few years later, November 11th, 1865, they were hanged too. So, the fun never ends.
Because they were caught.
Yeah. Well, I think they gave themselves up. And
right, but that was their crime.
Yes. And of course, they were convicted and they were hung too. Now, I understand that they went out and they killed maybe 800 or maybe 1,000 people or more. And I get that. And it wasn't right. But they had good reason to have a war against the United States because, we were starving them. We shysted them out of all their land and made them, you've seen I read it. They were giving them just, 100 acres or so to each family. We'll give them 160 acres per family or whatever it is. And that's what they got to live on. And, nobody wants to do that. Here's a couple of acres. And there you go. That's what you got.
Well, and one of the things that has been stipulated in several readings has been that the native folks had no real concept of money. They state that like right off the bat. They didn't have any concept of money or what it meant or like the value that land was valued or that, there were acres. None of that. They had no concept of that.
Yeah, they did. And I agree on that. Okay, so here's the part where I was talking about. To ensure that the Dakota were totally driven from Minnesota, a bounty was created, awarding money for every Dakota scalp turned in. Little Crow, remember him? He was the leader of the whole thing, who had led the first raids, was killed, and his scalp collected for bounty. His skull was kept as a memento until 1971. The last Dakota executions took place in 1865. So 100 years later, his skull was kept as a memento.
But by whom?
I do not know. It doesn't say.
It doesn't say.
No, it doesn't say. But it just tells you that this is what was going through these people's heads. It's like, the state of Minnesota, the governor said, let's put a bounty on their scalps and make sure they leave the state. How? You know what I'm saying?
I do.
We're supposed to be a civilized, advanced culture, and we're no better than the Indians when it comes to warfare. We're worse.
Yeah. Because that turned every citizen against the native folk, no matter what they did. So what if a gentleman had married a native woman? Did that make her a citizen, or did that make her an Indian? And there's a native woman, and you could tell back in those days. You still can.
Yeah.
Complexion and hair and that. So they don't have many blonde Indians. You know what I mean? So It's like But you know, so back in those days, it's like, oh, we know that person is an Indian. Well, wait a minute, I got my green card. Yeah, but your scalp's worth $200. Screw your
Yeah.
green card. But I'm a citizen. Don't care. Bang. Strip. You know.
Well, you know, I mean, and the thing is if we just do things over and over, you know, in the South they created the KKK because of the, you know, the slave thing and the Negroes and whatever, and then yet here they didn't have the Negroes, but they had the Indians, so you created the Knights of the Forest to get, you know, doing the same darn thing, secret handshakes and you know, meeting in the dark in the, you know, middle of the night to look, you know, talk about, you know, how many Indians we can scalp.
And there was, and back in those days, you know, there were Rough Riders that were working for the North and the South, and folks were traveling around. So the idea of the KKK, probably because there was a, you know, there were the Knights. Well, the KKK stands for the Grand Knights of the, you know, the Klan. You know, but anyway, so they are the Knights. So the Knights, what was they called again?
Knights of the Forest.
The Knights of the Forest.
Yes, the Forest.
Yeah. See, so they were KKK.
Pretty much.
I mean, they were the beginnings of, because at the same time period, just further south and into Kansas and stuff, where guess where they sent the Indians, you know, down to Kansas, right?
Yep. No, Nebraska.
Yeah, well, but still, during that time period, there were Southerners who were running around trying to get sympathy, and so, you know, they were wearing the hoods and doing the thing, and they were intimidating people, and so yeah.
You know that the thing is, with the war and everything, they had it out for the Indians before that, because I was reading about how one of the chiefs in the beginning of the war, he offered that he would go with 100 warriors to help fight with the U.S. government against the South. And you know what he was told? We don't need your help. No, stay home. We don't need your help. And
because they had other plans for the native folk.
That's right. They had other plans. They didn't want that. See, and that's the thing. They didn't respect them. They, you know, you can tell. They looked at him like, okay, you're an Indian. You're low beneath us. We're gonna exterminate you next. Don't you worry. You just sit put. You know, you're 100 warriors. We don't care if they come and help or not. We're more powerful. We don't want you to learn any of our war stuff. You know what I'm saying?
Yep. And now think about this too. Lewis and Clark had just come back in 1825-ish, right?
Yeah,
and
1804. 1804, or yeah, 18. They went out in 1803 and 1804.
Oh, I thought it was later than that. Okay. But anyway, they got back and they start talking to people and telling folks. Well, then folks start moving west, and when you get past the Mississippi and you look out there across the plain, you go, "Holy crap! There's a lot of land out there." So as that concept came to the white men, the powerful men, you know, and by the 1850s, they had a concept. There is a lot of land out there, and we're going to make money off of it. We're going to, you know, exploit people. You know, there are a lot of people still coming from England and other places, you know, a lot of immigration from different countries by that time. And so, and they were like, come on in, y'all, until a certain point. And then they cut that off too. And they cut off immigration. And there's a big hullabaloo about that when they did. But you know, you think about, you know, the American government being bad to the border and all this kind of stuff. You should have known the government back in the day. So, but the rules and the laws and things that they had on book, and were staunch on. They weren't letting anybody get through. You know, and under any circumstance. They were brutal. So now you have these folks that, so they've had practice at how big the land is. And so they've got maps now, they've got plans. So the oligarchs, the ones that really have the power, see a much bigger picture because now they got a map. Literally, they've got a map. And the Indians don't have any concept of a map. They just know what they know in their head. So, but the rich folks look at it and go, oh, wow. So the idea that, you know, we can think about it now and go, these folks had a larger plan a long time ago. And the answer, it's true. The folks that were, you know, the older families, when they got the map and saw how big everything was and saw that, you know, if we take control of this now, woo, buddy. And they did, and they have, and they still are in control.
Yeah, exactly. And it's like we're in the soap opera, and when you're in the soap opera, you don't see it. But we can look back and see, you know, how the Indians seen it back in the day. And we already see they're not afraid to put up a concentration camp. They're not afraid to execute people. They're not afraid to starve you to death. They're not afraid to write a treaty and not stand behind it. So what's the chance that that would happen again? That seems to be the nature of the beast. Right?
Yeah, I mean, in a lot of ways, they've had a charter with veterans. When the veterans signed up to, you know, complete their goal and work for the government and be there and be the soldier, and so many of them are on the streets now. And you think, well, wait a minute, that's lousy payment for what they you know gave up and for what they dedicated their lives for. You know, so has the government done? Are they any better? No. If anything, they're worse because we are supposed to be even more, you know, society oriented, and we're supposed to be more humble, and we're supposed to be more, and we ain't no more in the man in the moon.
Right.
Government wide. Government wide.
I agree. I don't know if anybody else has got any thoughts on that, but I agree with that. We haven't really done anything. We are still, you know, we're kind of bad. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Lower class people are still frowned upon from government. You people down there, if you ain't got $1 million, you ain't worth nothing. You know, and to these oligarchs and stuff, that's the way they look at us peons down here. We're the working class. They do not give two hoots to us. And it's the same way they treated the Indians. Now, I say that because they are still doing it. But back in the 80s, I think it was, when there was the big farm crisis and everything, what happened? The small farms couldn't deal. The big farm and the big business and money put all the small farmers out of business. So they had to sell to the oligarchs. And so, you know, it was another land grab.
Yeah.
And they still do it.
And just in a different way. They use banks, money, prices, you know, taxes. But, you know, the same thing happens. A big corporation buys up a lot of grain. And just before, you know, harvest season, they sell all the grain. The price drops to the bottom, and the farmer goes to get his grain, and he goes to sell it, and he gets nothing because the corporation just, you know, sold all the grain that they acquired for cheap last year. Now you get nothing, and you go out of business. And then they come swoop in and buy all your land up because, you know,
you
can't. I mean, it's a real simple process in a way.
If people don't, you know, people think, oh, no, we're doing better now. And no, we ain't. They've just figured out different ways to steal it. And so the oligarchs and them folk, whoever them folk are, And but they're still doing it. They still get around the law. They still are able to do certain things, you know, and it ain't right. It ain't
It,
right.
it
We
ain't.
talk about justice in the United States, and them poor Indians were a precursor to the poor white man as to how the government and the oligarchs felt about the rest of the population.
Yeah,
They could not care less.
they couldn't. Yeah, they don't care about you and me. All they care about is, staying in power. And the
Yep,
government officials, they don't care because you know what? We're expendable. There's a lot of us. You can get rid of a lot of us, and we'll just produce more and then do it all over again. Better for them, right?
that's right. But we love you and we care about you, and we thank you for showing up when you do. And so we appreciate you. And we think that they're the savages, by the way.
Exactly. So
You
you got a
know,
good story for us tonight.
yeah, I hope so. It's called Hawkman, but it's not a story about me, I don't think. And it's called Akumawi.
Nice.
Akumawi. Are we ready to start? That was an
Well,
interesting segue.
anytime you are, the show is yours.
All right, well, give me a second. I was in the middle of pulling cards, so let me.
Yep,
I
it's
got.
all like I said. There's a lot to be said about learning from history, and if we don't pay attention to history, we're bound to repeat it, and that is so true. And I think we are. We are in the midst of repeating history again. Um,
Again.
yeah, it's
I
just that.
mean, things that went on 100 years ago. We're repeating things again.
Yeah, it's just different faces, and same tactics. Like I said, the government hasn't changed. You think they're gonna segregate one section of people and they'll lock them up? They won't think twice about it. They'll say, believe in ABCs, instead of XYZs or something. And that there's your cause and case to round you up. Maybe you got a wart on your nose, and they're going to say, okay, all the people with a wart on their nose are going to go to the FEMA camp, but we can't call it a FEMA camp. We're going to call it, or a concentration camp. We're going to call it a freedom camp, or a hotel for adults.
Yep.
Yeah. So it's kind of funny, because we don't think of things like that, but it happens. They just change the names, they change the people a little bit, and the cause always stays the same. We just fall into the trap. That's all I think, and we just fall into that dang trap. And if we knew better, we would be smart enough not to do that. But nobody reads, nobody listens to history so much, and then nobody sticks together united. And because of that, we just fall into the hole and go to the, lambs to the slaughter.
Yeah, and there's so many people that think they're in touch with things, and they look out the window one day and go, "Wait a minute, where am I? How did I
Mhm.
get here?" And
Well,
it's like, well, you were going down the road. All you had to do is, pick your head up and look and pay attention. And so there's so many people who are not paying attention now, and to the things they're paying attention to are like TikTok and things, and meow kitties, and what kind of pranks can I pull on my wife? And so it's like, so there's your attention span, Lord have mercy,
well,
so one of
what?
these days they're going to look up from them little short things and go, what happened?
Well, yeah, and that's the thing too is we don't pay attention, and how should I say it? Just like the Indian chiefs, they didn't understand the language. They didn't understand the interpretation of the treaties. You're going to relinquish all your lands, but you're going to get money forever. What is forever? Well, there's, you know, they didn't put in there, well, the stipulations, like, and then, you know, the U.S. government can nullify this treaty at any given time. So as soon as you guys are out of bounds, you do something we don't like, well, we'll just null and void it.
Or we change administrations.
Yes, and when we change administrations, you don't get your money. Oh, we're going to war, you don't get your money. We'll appoint a bunch of guys in charge of all of this who are really corrupt, and they'll steal all your money, and you'll be left starving. And but it just shows you when people are starving, they tend to revolt.
Rebel.
Yeah, rebel. I mean, you got nothing to lose. You're going to die. People around you are starving to death. They're dying. You're going to die soon, too. So what are you going to do? You're going to fight back. Unless you're that stupid and just want to sit there and starve to death.
And to the native folks, remember, to the men, you know, as because they were proud of being a warrior. And by relinquishing and by giving up, it was like, you know, they lost the war without a battle. Without a true battle, you know?
Yeah.
And so when they did revolt, it was sort of a way to like, okay, I can earn my cred, you know?
Yeah. Well, I agree. All
right, so we ready? Let me get a sip here, and I'm ready.
All right, you're up.
Number 3 in the story of this in this book that we're reading from, and it's Akumawi and Atsugiwi. Tales and Akumawi Myths by Dixon, and it's 1909. So we give credit to where credit's due. So this story is more than 100 years old. It was written down 100 years ago and told to Mr. Dixon. And I've heard of Mr. Dixon in many of the stories that I've read, and a few that we have read to you. And so this gentleman, I don't have any history on him other than I know that he collected a lot of Native American stories. And it's a good thing because, you know, we have them now after 100 years, because even the native peoples don't have many of these stories written down. Some of the folks remember parts of stories that grandma and grandpa told, that they were told as children, and they remember parts of it. But, you know, Mr. Dixon and a few other people had the presence of mind, I would say, to have written down these stories. So I thank them posthumously. That means after they're dead. So this story is Hawkman, Akumawi. Son had a wife, Shell Woman. She said to her husband, "There are 2 chiefs living over there. Let our children go and marry them." So son agreed. And Shell Woman said, "Now go ye. There are many chiefs there. They have much to eat. Ye must go to Pine Martin. He is the best." Then the sisters got ready, put in their pack baskets of shell, salmon, and acorn bread, and manzanita berries for food, and came from the west hitherward across the Fall Valley, across the Fall River. As they came around the point of woods in the valley, Coyote was burning down a tree and saw them. The youngest sister knew at once who he was, but the oldest fell in love at once. The youngest said, "Go on. Don't stop. That is Coyote." Then Coyote said to himself, "I wish that she should not know who I am." My page won't move. Hang on. Forgive me, I'll find my spot. My apologies, and the screen's so small I can't read it off of the other one. So just hang on a minute. For some reason, my screen is frozen. This is so weird. My program will not allow me to do a page down. Isn't that strange?
You gonna make it there?
I don't know. It'll allow me to, I'm in a PDF file thing.
Yeah.
Reader. And my apologies, everybody, but this program is only allowing me to scroll up, but it won't let me, no matter what I do, it won't allow me to scroll down.
Huh.
This is really weird. I can go up all I want to. And I just shrunk the program down and back up and to see if it would, see if it was some kind of a glitch.
Uh-huh.
And at the moment, it hasn't done anything. Wait, I think I might have it.
All right.
Oh, should I start over or?
No, I think you were right here at the end.
Yeah, I know where I was. I just, as far as continuity.
No, go ahead.
I'll start up a few sentences, okay?
Yeah, go ahead. Whatever. I'll edit this part out when I put it together. Okay.
Okie dokie. As the sisters came around the point of woods in the valley, Coyote was burning down a tree and saw them. The youngest sister knew at once who he was, but the oldest fell in love at once. The youngest said, "Go on, don't stop. That is Coyote." Then Coyote said to himself, I wish that she should not know who I am, and ran ahead, calling for all kinds of fine clothing to come to him. At once they were there at his hand, and putting them on, he disguised himself so that he looked different, covering up a dimple which he had. But when he again met the sisters, the youngest knew him again at once. She said, "Go on, don't stop. That is Coyote." So they went on. By and by, they saw smoke rising. "Someone lives there. Let us go and visit and find out where to go." So they went and found in the house Hawkman. He was a shaman and lay with his back to the fire. "Where do you come from?" he said. "And where are you going?" "Our father and mother told us to go to Platayakika," said the oldest, "to the Pine Martin brothers, who defecate only dentalia. To them they told us to go." "Ah," said Hawkman, "I think they must have meant me. I am Hawkman, and I defecate only bees. I am a chief. I go out to hunt and send my people out to hunt and get wood. What kind of a house did your father say this man lived in to whom you were going?" Then the oldest sister said, "At the house there is a post on which hangs a bear hide, they told us." "Yes," said Hawkman, "I am the one they meant. The bear hide hangs there. Wait a moment, I will prove to you that I am the one. Hold out your caps." Then they held out their caps, and he ran up and defecated in them. He defecated rattles into the caps. Then he said, "Close your eyes." And they did so. And when they heard the rattling, they thought it was dentalia. And Hawkman said, "Let us go." And they said, "Yes." They put on their packs and started. "Do ye go slowly, I will go on ahead." So they went, and he hurried on and reached there first. The post with the bear hide was standing outside the door of the house opposite his, and so he quickly pulled it up and set it by his door. Then the sisters arrived and saw the post and the hide, and went at once to his house and took off their packs. Now Hawkman had a wife, and he told her to go over and sit on the opposite side of the house and not call him husband, but son. And she promised. When the sisters came in, Hawkman told them to sit in the wife's place, and they did. Then people came, bringing deer, and piled it up, and sent a boy to Hawkman's to call him. When the boy came, Hawkman made a noise with some dried grass, so that the sisters should not hear what the boy said. Then he told them that he had to go out to divide up the meat. "I only took what I wanted for myself before, for I had no wife," said he. "Now I shall have to bring more." So he went out and took a basket with him. Going over to where the people were, he sat down and opened his mouth. As they ate their meat, they tossed the bones to him, and he swallowed them, while they joked him, saying, "Did you hear that some girls were coming to marry you?" Then they laughed. After they had finished, he went off, sat down behind the house, and sliced the flesh off of his thighs and put it into the basket. He carried it back, and his wives cooked the meat. And although it smelled and tasted very badly, yet they ate it, thinking it was dear. Then they went to sleep. In the morning, he went off, as he said, to hunt, but instead cut off more of his flesh and put it and his entrails into the basket. In the evening, when he got back, his wives again cooked the meat and ate. Again, the boy came and called him to come out. And as before, he made a noise so that the women should not hear. He went out, and the people threw him bones, taunting him as they had the previous night. Meanwhile, the youngest sister crawled softly after him and saw what was going on, and came back and told her sister, "You always do what you want. You will not take advice. I know that the chief we were to marry lives opposite. This man we live with came on ahead of us. He took down the bear hide and brought it over here. Then Hawkman came in again with his basket of flesh, but they would not eat any. In the morning he went off to hunt again. Then the two sisters destroyed their children, dressed themselves up finely, took their baskets, and went out. They went across to the other house, and going in, sat down by Pine Martin's side. By and by, the people came in from the hunt and brought deer. They skinned and cut it up, cooked it, and ate supper. Weasel, however, did not like it that these two women, Hawkman's wives, should sit by his brother, Pine Martin. But Martin just sat there and said nothing, but smoked marrow all the time. Meanwhile, Hawkman came back and found that his wives had gone. He grew very angry and at once put on his shaman's ornaments and began to dance and to sing. Kachi, kachi, we know. Kachi, kachi, we know. At once it began to rain. Only Weasel noticed it and spoke of it. All night it poured. The water rose higher and higher till it ran in at the door. Tell them to go back, these two women. That Hawkman will kill us. He will drown us. But Pine Martin said nothing until morning. Then he said, I do not like this. Where is a brave man? I want him to go over and kill Hawkman. So a man got up and went over, taking a knife and a shield. Meanwhile, Hawkman was dancing harder and harder, and at every leap his head came up through the smoke hole. The man crept nearer and nearer, and finally struck Hawkman and cut off his head. And at once the rain stopped, and the cloud cleared away, and the water sank. Then the people said to each other, if a shaman is bad, we will kill him. That is how it shall be. And then they went off to hunt. The end. So imagine this guy jumping up and down, jumping up and down, and all of a sudden it'd be like whack-a-mole.
And they chopped off his head.
Yep.
It just, yep. And there we're back to the head choppings.
And, deception, Coyote, he was sort of open about his deception, but they kept seeing it. Like, that's Coyote, keep going, yeah. But then the other guy, he's like, man, I got this, So he pulled the big whammy on him,
Yep. That is true.
And he already had a wife, and she went along with it. Really? Goodness gracious. Shame on her, So, during this time, I went through the cards, shuffled them several times, and ended up with 3 cards tonight.
Well, what do you got for our cards tonight?
Interesting 3-card pull. First one out is grouse upside down. The second one is antelope, right side up. And the last one is bat, right side up. So let me get the book here and take a drink. And one is number 34. The other one's 37, and the last one's 42. So it's interesting that they're all in the back of the book in a way. They're kind of grouped back there. I went right to it. Oh, yeah, grouse is the sacred spiral. So remember, going around and around and around, clockwise means one thing and counterclockwise means another. I've seen several things recently that say that if you're entering a sacred circle, you should enter and go clockwise. And you should go all the way around at least once. So if you want to truly be respectful to the creator and to the spirits, you should enter a circle clockwise. And a lot of times you must enter in from the east. But that depends on the tribe. Some tribes enter from the north, but they always go clockwise at least one time around. So just saying. So if you're ever invited into a circle, remember that. So grouse is the sacred spiral. The sacred spiral is also one of the oldest known symbols for personal power. When you think of the grouse medicine, visualize a whirlpool or even a tornado. For the sacred spiral will take you to the center. The spiral is a metaphor for personal vision and enlightenment. Many initiates on vision quest paint spirals on their bodies and believe that the great mystery will favor them with visions of power and purpose because of this symbol. Now, the upside down grouse is this. Drawing the grouse medicine card in the reverse position signals a dissipation of energy and lack of control and discipline. It is a symbol of a lost connection to the source and signifies a lack of clear intent behind an outpouring of energy. You may feel like you are in a tailspin or going down the drain. Confront confusion, either in yourself or in others who may be in the picture, because the way your energy may be causing friction or sparks or a convolution of a situation that needs clarification. Work towards harnessing your energy and directing it towards a clearly defined goal. And using this sacred dance as a tool to right contrary grouse, you may also find that it is a tool to center or ground you. And grounding, you are once again connected to Mother Earth and balancing out the spinning in your head. Now, interesting, I just did a video a few hours ago about um, um, overcoming the chaos that's going on now. And I talked about how it's important to ground yourself and also, to um, not let it get to you. So the next card up is Antelope, right side up, number 37. Antelope is action. So that's an interesting, that's an interesting correlation. So you've got the spiral upside down, something may be draining your energy, and Antelope is talking you into action. When time was just beginning, the tribe of man was small. Antelope saw that the two-leggeds were naked, hungry, and in danger of extinction. The ancestors would soon vanish from Mother Earth if action were not taken. Antelope took action and came into the camp, calling to all the two-leggeds to come together for council. The great mystery sent me to teach you a lesson. The lesson is to do. You have no need to be fearful if you know what to do, and then you do it, Antelope said. And what shall we do? Asked the people. If you are naked and cold, you should kill me and take my coat to keep you warm. It is my gift to you, so do it. We will, said the people, but what of our hunger? We are starving. What can we do to save ourselves? If you are hungry, you should kill me and take my flesh, for it will nourish you and make you strong. It is my gift to you and a part of my evolution. It is my service, so do it. Antelope knew that humankind would not survive the Ice Age if the people didn't learn to eat meat. Before the movement of the Great Ice Age in the mountains, fruit and vegetables have been plentiful, and two-leggeds, all they had to do was go around, and that's where the hunter-gatherer thing came in. So humans learned Antelope's lessons well. Because of Antelope, humans took proper action and survived to this present day. So it's about action. So something's draining your energy possibly, or you're sending energy in the wrong direction. Take action to fix it. And Bat, which is coming up, number 42. Take action. And Bat is rebirth. So if you take action, you're going to be reborn into a new reality. Steeped in the mystery of the Mesoamerican tribal ritual is the legend of the bat, akin to the ancient Buddhist belief in reincarnation, but it is a symbol of rebirth. Bat has for centuries been a treasured medicine of the Aztec Toltec, Tolkien, and the Mayan peoples. Bat embraces the idea of shamanistic death. The ritual death of the healer is steeped in secrets and highly involved initiation rites. Shaman death is a symbolic death of the initiate to the old ways of life and personal identity. So here you are with the grouse and the sacred spiral. Change the direction if your energy is being sapped. Antelope is telling you to take action, and that offer what Bat brings you is rebirth, which means new ideas and new ways of thinking about things. And boy, is this a time for rebirth. with all the confusion and all the politics and all this. So take action when it's necessary, and think back, rebirth. So, my friends, I hope that makes any sense to you at all. Does to me.
Makes sense to me too. Yes, it does. Those are good cards.
Yeah, not a strong message, but a good message. Not one of them slap you in the head. Oh my God, but no, if your energy is being drained or you feel you're heading the wrong direction, change it. Take action, and with it, you will be reborn. That's good. That's a good message. I like that.
Yep.
So how'd we do tonight?
We did pretty good. We're just under 2 hours. I guess my presentation, I managed to get it down pat. So it pays to have notes and all that good stuff. And I want to thank everybody for coming tonight.
I kept interrupting you too, because it was an hour and a half, and we were still yakking about stuff. So
I know.
I'm sorry I get that way sometimes, but
it's good when you ask questions. Sometimes I got answers, and sometimes I don't. And sometimes you ask the question just before I give the answers too. Well, how much were they paid? Well, that's the good question. Just next on the list.
Well, see, I'm doing this, forward thinking thing. I'm, reading your mind there.
Exactly. But, it's all good. I hope everybody learned something from all of this. Like I said, I thought it was one of the most fascinating stories that we never hear about. Because how often do they talk about the Dakota War in 1862? No, it's always the Civil War. Well, you kind of forget about the Dakota War, which was really bad for those people.
Yeah, and on the West Coast, I've been learning that that Chinese have been coming to the West Coast for a long time. And that they were being sold basically as slaves to help build the railroads along the West Coast and through the Rockies, because they were so good at chipping away the rock to build tunnels. That's how they got the nickname of Chink.
Well, yeah, but they were small and they were tough, and they were expendable, and that's another thing. It's like the Indians, they didn't care. They're expendable. So we don't give them any food. The strongest will survive. Like the guy says, let them eat grass. Well, they're not cows, they're people. They can't just eat grass and live,
Right.
But what are you doing with all their money and all the supplies that's locked in your building? Oh, you're selling it to the white settlers and getting lots of money, and then you sell them the Indians a few items, and you double the cost of everything, and then you make even more money.
Yeah,
it's kind of sad that our government let it go on, but they had to know that was going on.
Yeah. And and also too, people, I was looking into the slavery thing, and it's like people have no idea the amount of slavery that went on the West Coast.
Yeah.
All up and down because of what was going, the gold, you name it. And the Chinese were exploited not only by Americans, but by their own people, and they were coming over in boatloads like the black slaves were on the East Coast. But nobody ever talks about what was going on the West Coast with the Chinese peoples. So, but anyway, I just thought it was amazing that, the government has exploited the Native American to the point of almost extinction. They brought over, the slaves from Africa and other places. And then on the West Coast, you'd think, oh, them folks over there are nice and kind. No, they were exploiting the Chinese peoples. It's like, at some point, the government was exploiting people no matter where you turned,
Well, and that's the other thing too. You think that what they were nice on the West Coast, they were exploiting the Chinese. They weren't. They were exterminating the Indian tribes on the West Coast too. That's my another upcoming show here is they went out literally went out to exterminate all the Indians, literally kill them all off. The tribes were literally killed all off. They just went through and slaughtered them all. Oh, there's a bunch of Indians. Let's get them and wipe them off, for no reason. Because they knew that they were preparing like for the settlers to come. Here's the gold rush is coming and we need land. And here we got all these squatting Indians on it. We got to get rid of them. What do we do with them?
Well, and here's the thing, because the Indian were indigenous, they were like, it's already ours. Why, what's this deal? So, but when they brought in the Chinese were coming to a new land to start over, to start anew, to stake a claim, where the Indians that were here were already, but we don't, why should we assimilate? We already live here. But the Chinese who came over had a different reason. So they were like, oh, gung ho. Yeah, I'm going to start over. Going to, America, they, suffered all this way and on the ships and all whatever, and now they're over here. So they got an impetus, a different kind of philosophy than the native folk. So they had to get rid of the native folk and replace them with the Chinese people who really wanted to work for them. They really wanted to assimilate. They really wanted to work for the white man, where the Indians said, F you.
Oh, I get it. But, that's the thing. Just think, I'm going to show up at somebody's house. And they got some land. And I'm going to say, listen, you got a lot of land here. I'm going to take this chunk. You can live over there. What are they going to say to me? They're going to say, wait a minute, this is my land. Well, I have, a bunch of people backing me up. I have guns and weapons. I'll tell you what. I'll give you
I got this piece of paper.
I got a piece of paper. It says this is my land now. And what do would people of today fall for this? If I showed up at somebody's house and I said, hey, I have a piece of paper that says I'm taking half of your land over here, and you get to live on this half, and thanks a lot. What do you think they would do? They would call a lawyer. They would call the cops. No, who knows? Maybe they would just say, okay, I guess so. Right?
Well, they might get an arrow,
Yeah, I don't know, but that's what I'm saying is and that's what it was. It was basically somebody coming to your house and saying, listen, you got a lot. I'm going to take this chunk. I'll tell you what, I'll give you a little bit of food, a little bit of money, and I'll pay it over off of forever. I'll give you a little money and food forever. And you're thinking, well, that's a pretty good deal, right?
But you don't understand the concept really of money. You don't have the true concept of land deals and what that means. You don't have a true concept of words and of the meanings of things. So here you are trying to get along, and you're just getting, bent over every inch you walk. It was really horrible.
Sounds like you're trying to sell them a timeshare.
Yep.
Yeah. I'll sell you a timeshare. You can stay on this one little house You know, we'll own all the rest, and you just give me money every year. Only it's the opposite way around. Anyway, enough of that. But yeah, something to think about.
And the one thing is to look around today and just observe, because people think, well, that happened way back when. And look around, because the government is still in places. They still can take your land by eminent domain. So there was somebody out west that they found that their property was had a lot of lithium on it. And so the government said, whoa, look, you know, well, we want to mine this. And they said, no, you know, it's a farm. We don't want you to tear up the land. And they said, well, if you don't sell it to us and you're not going to mine it, then we're going to take it. And they were like, wait, no, this is my farm. They went, sorry, dude, eminent domain. For the good of the country, we're going to take your farm and make you move, and we don't give a damn what you think about it, whether or not we tear it up and turn it into a big open pit mine, and you ain't got nothing to say. Eminent domain. Thank you very much.
So you either can get a little bit of money, or you get zero and you get kicked off anyway.
Right.
That's the way it is.
That's the way it is. So this idea that the government ain't, you know, doesn't do it anymore or anything like that, you just don't hear about it all the time. But they're still doing it.
The government is looking out for our best interest always.
If they want to put in a new, I got right at the top of my driveway is a strip of land that's not worth a whole lot because of where it sits. And but one thing is that makes it worthless to me is the fact that there's a main power line running right down across the property. And because of, I can't sell this little strip of land right on the road because you can't put a trailer or anything underneath the wire. You can't, you know, so this that cuts out a lot of the property value. So I have to leave it the way it is because of eminent domain.
Yeah, but you still have to pay the taxes.
Yep. Well, you know, it's still mine, but to the point, I was like, you know, it'd be nice. I've had friends of mine like, you know, I'll buy that little strip of property and then I can live near you, you know, we could be right there and blah, blah, blah. And it's like, I can't do it because of the power line that goes through that area, that over that spot. So it's like, well, there you go. You know, so that's sort of a reverse thing, but it's still, you know, it's the right of way of the power lines that you can't interfere with underneath it and so forth and all that. So it's like, okie dokie. But yeah, the power of the government in a lot of ways. So it also, I got into trouble several years ago and I was behind on my taxes. And the government came and put a big sign on my door and said, you know, pay it in 30 days or we're going to sell it. We're going to sell your property for the price of your taxes. So the taxes were like $400. And so they were going to sell my 40 acres for $400.
Yeah.
Because I was so poor at the time.
Yeah, ain't that crazy? You got a valuable property, but for $400, they will take it away from you.
So that's how the rich gain extra property. For whatever reason, somebody falls behind, like me having issues, back issues, and all that sort of thing. And then, you know, but it was in between getting my Social Security. And so they were like, you know, no, we'll just go ahead and sell it, you know, and you can live on it, but it's ours. You know, we take title of it. So wait a minute. What?
Yeah.
So yeah.
For $400 lousy dollars. Anyway, Susie Q wants to know if you're going to have a show tonight.
Yeah, I'm going to take a little break and go get some more coffee, turn the coffee pot off, and get some dessert. I think I might eat a ice cream bar. But yeah, I'll come back on for a little bit.
All right. Well, let's sign off. I got to go to work tomorrow, and we'll do this again next week. Remember, everybody, go out and do something nice. Do a little studying. Find out about your history, because, you know what? This could all happen again. So be aware, be alert, realize it. And there's Chloe. Hey, Chloe. There she is. Good to see you. Anyway, okay. Well, with that, everybody, do something nice for your neighbor. Give them a wave, a smile, anything. It's July. It's hot. Enjoy. Be safe. And take care. Stay cool and stay alive. Love you all. Peace, everybody. Be the frequency you want to receive.
Cheers.